The New South Wales government is considering changing the rules around big gatherings to help stem the spread of the virus. A ban could force the cancellation of the Royal Easter Show, due to open next month. Dr. Jamie Ranse is a research fellow in emergency care and says that restrictions at borders would help to slow down the spread of the virus.
Really broadly, the idea of closing borders or restricting mass gatherings or major events such as festivals and concerts around the country is predominantly about ensuring that the spread of infection is slowed down. So rather than having large increases and spikes in infectious diseases related to the coronavirus appearing at largely the same time, the idea of restricting movement of people is purely about trying to subdue the number of patients or people that are infected by the virus at any one particular point in time.
And so are there specific junctures in a pandemic when public health measures such as those that you've just discussed should be enacted?
Yeah, so mass gatherings or major events such as our football or Grand Prix or Easter shows pose very different types of characteristics depending on the event themselves. There is no two events that are quite similar on those characteristics. So in determining whether or not events should be cancelled or postponed, it's really important that those characteristics are explored. So for example, outdoor events might pose a different type of risk in terms of infectious disease transmission in comparison to indoor types of events. Likewise, if we have events with large numbers of people, tens of thousands of people, the chance of transmission to a larger portion of the population is obviously increased in comparison to a lot smaller of events, which may only be 100 or 1,000 types of events. So I think it's really important that event organisers and event authorities have close conversations with the health authorities in determining whether or not events should continue or whether the characteristics of their event actually impose a large population health risk to our community, and therefore events should be cancelled or postponed.
Okay, let's talk about a few specific events on Australia's calendar in the next month or so. The Formula One Grand Prix this weekend in Melbourne has been the subject of much conjecture about whether it should go ahead. More than 300,000 spectators are expected to be watching. 5 team members have now been tested but not yet confirmed for the coronavirus. What are the risks involved in holding this event?
Yeah, so I guess once again reiterating that those event organisers would be having conversations with the health authorities to determine as to the level of strategies that they need to put in place to ensure that the community is safe. Things such as social distancing or ensuring that people are further apart from one another is something that we know from the evidence to help slow the transmission rate. So it may be that events in the future we see may be run without spectators present, or that spectators might be more widely dispersed to observe that particular event. The example of the Grand Prix is interesting because there are obviously a large surface area that participants could go to observe that event in comparison to having 300,000 people in a race course, for example. So the message would be that from an individual perspective, people need to understand that there definitely is a risk of contracting coronavirus if they do attend major or mass gathering-like events. And because of that, they need to themselves undertake a self-assessment as to whether or not they're in a vulnerable population, that if they were to contain the coronavirus, whether that would have fatal effects for them, or whether if they obtain the coronavirus, they would become generally unwell, but not necessarily have fatal effects. So partly at this stage, it's very much about individuals having a self-assessment as to whether or not they would attend such an event until such time that health authorities with event organisers come out and cancel such events.